And welcome to another Tri-tutors video. In today's video we're going to be unpacking the final act of William Shakespeare's Othello. This act only has 2 scenes, but they are jam-packed with a lot of action. So in scene 1, here we have Rodrigo trying to kill Cassio. So remember, if you think back to Act 4, Iago has manipulated and convinced Rodrigo to assist him, and he's convinced him that Cassio is a threat, and so he must try and kill him. Cassio wounds Rodrigo in self-defense. So Rodrigo tries to stab or kill Cassio. Cassio notices and he stabs and wounds Rodrigo in self-defense. Even though Iago promised Rodrigo that he would assist him, he does not provide backup. So Iago is there in the background. He's seeing this happen. He told Rodrigo he was going to help him. Obviously, he's Iago, so he doesn't actually help. And Iago goes around the back and he secretly wounds Cassio. So Cassio believes that it is Rodrigo. Gratiano and Lodovico hear the disturbance and come to investigate. And Iago also emerges, and I've put here after hearing the disturbance in inverted commas because obviously he caused the disturbance, but he comes and pretends like he's never heard of this before. Iago then sees Cassio tells Iago, like, this man, I don't even know who he is, but he tried to kill me. And so Iago goes and he kills Rodrigo for his attack on Cassio. So really quite brutal here. He just murders Rodrigo. And Rodrigo finally realizes in his dying moments how manipulative and evil Iago really is. Iago continues to weave his web of lies, and he begins accusing Bianca of being involved in Cassio's stabbing. So we can just see the extent of Iago's manipulation here. It's not a really important plot point, the fact that he starts trying to convince Cassio that Bianca was a part of this in some way, but it really just continues to paint him as a real antagonist. Moving on to Act 2, this is where we have the real tragedy. So obviously we've started with those tragic consequences with Rodrigo dying, and now we're going to have lots more people die. Well, our 2 main characters and another character as well. So Othello commands Desdemona to pray for forgiveness, but he will not listen to anything that she says. And so that's really important for our themes, as we discussed, because he is not open to discussion about whether she's innocent or not. He says, pray for your forgiveness, you are going to die. Othello then kills Desdemona, and Emilia, who remember is Iago's wife and Desdemona's attendant, enters the room and hears Desdemona's last words, which she says, "A guiltless death I die." And that's a really important quote because it shows that she is not guilty in her death. She is, Othello has killed an innocent woman. Emilia says that Desdemona was an angel and that Othello is a devil. So Emilia is horrified. Remember that Othello actually came to Emilia earlier and asked him if Desdemona was truthful and, faithful to him, and Emilia said yes. And so she's really devastated by Desdemona's death. Othello reveals to Emilia that it was her husband Iago who told him of Desdemona's affair. So before this point, Emilia had been in the dark about that. Remember, she had stolen the handkerchief for Iago, but she didn't know what Iago was plotting. Remember, she did think that there was someone manipulating Othello, but she didn't know it was Iago, and now she finds out. Iago arrives and proclaims that he only told Othello what he thought, and then Othello interpreted it in the way he saw fit, which is fundamentally true. If you think back to, Act 3, Scene 1, where we spoke about Iago being extremely manipulative and very subtle in this manipulation. So he doesn't say to Othello outright, look, Desdemona's having an affair, or I would watch Cassio and Desdemona closely because they're having an affair. He just says, observe her well with Cassio. He just says, just my thinking, like it's just for my own thoughts, nothing else. So he's quite true in this regard, in the fact that he tells Othello what he thought, and Othello then took it upon himself to interpret it and to go all crazy and, choose passion over reason. I mean, obviously you can contend that and say that, Iago was intentionally manipulating Othello, which is true, so you can spin it the other way. But I would say, based on the evidence, this is quite a true thing, and Othello has taken it out of proportion. Which Iago knew he would, but Othello still was the one who took on what Iago said. Emilia tells the truth of Iago's plan and how she stole the handkerchief per his request. So she's trying to defend Desdemona here, trying to show Othello what an evil thing he's done, and she starts professing the truth. And Iago tells her to stop speaking. She doesn't. She continues to tell the truth, and Iago then kills Emilia. So that's very dramatic as well. He kills his own wife. The characters then finally recognize Iago's villainy. So they finally recognize, after all this time, everyone's calling him honest Iago. Finally, they're like, okay, he's actually not so honest and truthful and good. Othello then tries to stab Iago, but Iago does not die. And while they're standing in this room, Othello calls for Cassio and he asks Cassio for his forgiveness. Othello then asks to be remembered, which was the quote on the very first slide here. He asks to be remembered in a fond manner, in a favorable manner, because despite what he's done to Desdemona, the rest of his life has been honorable. And then he kills himself. And that is the end of Othello. So just like in any Shakespeare, we need to ask the question, well, not any Shakespeare, but a Shakespearean tragedy, which Othello is definitely a Shakespearean tragedy. We need to ask, is our main character, is our protagonist, is Othello a tragic hero? So a tragic hero is a protagonist who is very honorable, who has a good reputation, who is noble, and yet they have one fatal flaw. They have one form of hamartia, one fatal flaw that leads to their demise. So Othello definitely falls into this category because his one fatal flaw is his jealousy and his easy trust of people, which takes this honorable man and turns him into the shell of his former self, where he is killing his wife and doing terrible things and having terrible thoughts. So I would definitely argue that Othello is a tragic hero. And with a tragic hero, it's very important, if you get an essay about it, to talk about how Othello was before and contrast it with how he was after. So tell me how before he was noble and reputable, and use all those quotes to back it up, and examples in the sense that he was asked by the Duke to go and lead the army in Cyprus. That's a very honorable man. And then at the end, how he turns out to be incredibly violent and not wicked, but he goes very violent and aggressive, and he does not represent his honorable personality. He's lost his honor, and he's a desperate plea at the end to protect that honor again. So here are our themes again, the same themes that have cropped up in every single act. So appearance versus reality. Obviously here we have Iago. He appears to be this honest man, but in reality now we finally figure out the rest of the characters finally see in reality he's a villain. Friendship and loyalty. I think we can see this in a positive way with Desdemona and Emilia. They really are loyal to each other. They really have this very strong connection and friendship, and Emilia dies trying to tell of Desdemona's innocence. But then you also have the counter to that, which is Iago and Othello, and also Iago and Rodrigo. I mean, Iago manipulates them both. Iago betrays them both. Love, that goes back to that question that I posed right at the beginning in Act 1 about the ways or the reasons that Desdemona and Othello give for loving each other. Is that really substantial? What does love really mean? Because clearly that love didn't last very long, and clearly it has its limits. Jealousy, obviously Othello's driven by jealousy in his action to kill Desdemona. Passion versus reason, we also spoke about this, in that Othello acts on passion rather than reason. He doesn't think it through, he doesn't think rationally, he just acts out of passion to kill Desdemona, to try and restore his reputation, which ultimately undermines it. Reputation and honor, there we spoke about that again. So here we've seen that Iago's reputation is false, that maybe we should call into question this whole idea of reputation. But we also see how important reputation is, that Othello's final words are, don't remember me as this, remember me as how I used to be. Remember me as this honorable person. And so we can see how important legacy and honor are. Racial prejudice, it's always present, by the fact that they keep calling Othello the Moor, as though that is his entire identity, so that's always present throughout the play. Betrayal and trust, we discussed that when we spoke about friendship and loyalty, and then fate versus free will. So that's obviously significant as well. And I think definitely this shows us free will because Othello is the one to, in inverted commas, pull the trigger. Obviously, he doesn't, there's no guns or anything, but he really does cause the death of Desdemona. He kills her. And so that to me shows a sense of free will. And the fact that he wants to preserve his legacy and he commits suicide, that's also a form of free will. He chose to enact those actions and to make those decisions. I hope that this has been helpful. Please subscribe and like the video.